want to get straight into it. We've got about, I think we've got 18 people on, which is awesome. We've got people from all over the region. So that's fantastic. Welcome to you all. Just to get started, I'm going to quickly talk about who I am. Those that don't know you, I founded Service Integrity Mystery Shopping about 15 years ago. And I also have been president of MSPA AP. I think it was for like 6 or 8 years, some ridiculous amount of time. And I was also vice president of MSPA Global. So I continue to do this as a way to stay in touch with their MSPA and to, I've got someone who's raised a hand, and to try to continue to help out and try to share some information that we get from all over the world, from other parts of the region as well. Today, I want to look at something quite specific, and that is I want to share the best ideas about mystery shopping sales, but I want to use real data, and the data I want to use is from all of you on this call. So now someone's just raised a hand and give me a moment. I thought I had this thing. No, thought I saw a raised hand. If you've got any questions, just hit me in the chat, please. That would be a lot easier than all the other things that can go on in webinars. Now, I don't want you, normally I get up here and or get on screen or on stage at the conferences and talk a lot about what different ways of doing things. What I don't want to do here is give you the answers to all the sales problems. I don't have the answers to all the sales problems, and I don't even have a lot of the answers to my own sales issues. We're always searching in sales. Now, hopefully those of you here are all either in sales and marketing or very, very closely associated to it. If not, that's fine, but I'm going to be asking for your input and your feedback. What we're going to do today, and this is completely out there and different, I'm going to introduce a topic and you'll be polled. So I'm going to do some live polls online and we will look at the results live, which is why I'm really keen to have the chat running, because I could just send you some polls, some surveys online, and some people are going to complete them, some people not, but we can't have an interaction. And even if you don't ask questions, it's going to feel more live. Now, what we're going to also have the chance to do is to ask each other questions and maybe sharing some prizes as they come along the way. So please actively use the chat. Now, really importantly as well, you will be anonymous. So in Zoom, there is a setting for polls that you can make them anonymous. And when you click on anonymous, which these are, it says the user information in the poll report will be kept anonymous. So you can answer with anonymity and you don't have to worry about other people knowing what you're doing. That's not the intention. The intention here is to find out who is doing what in sales. For example, are you doing cold calls? Are we using a CRM? What exactly is it that we're doing in sales? And hopefully you'll see in those results a good picture of what the members of the association in general are doing. So hopefully you're along for a bit of an interesting ride rather than me just talking. Now the results, the other thing is that the results will be shared to all of you, but again, they'll be anonymous. I won't even know who they are, and they don't even share, Zoom don't even share who the respondents were. Now, bear with me because their survey mechanism is nowhere near as complicated as the stuff that we do, but it's good enough for what we need to do. So what we're going to do with sales is really follow the pipeline. What exactly does a sales pipeline look like? Now, you might have a slightly different one to this, but this is a bit of a popular one these days called AIDA. So make the prospect aware that you are even there, generate some interest. Now, you could do that by simply answering their inquiry or by doing podcasts or doing social media stuff, whatever. Get them to make a decision and then take some action. So the sales pipelines can look, as you know, they can look anything, something different to that. They could have intention up the top, like just generate some activity. Then you have the marriage sequence and the holding of hands and the dance. And then you have finally a commitment or a proposal for them to purchase, and then you have them committing to purchase. But it's all the same process, which is a big, broad top and then a very narrow bottom. And the more wide we can get the bottom of this to be, the better. What I want to look at is different parts of the pipeline throughout the whole industry. I hope that's of interest to you, as it's going to be to me as well. So I'm going to, now I'm not in presentation mode, so okay. So what I want to do is quickly jump into the first poll. So I'm going to push a poll through to you. And the first one is about, let's jump into it, about roles. So, and this is more of a practice, I suppose. Well, I've just launched a poll and hopefully you've got it in front of you. Now, if you haven't, this is going to be a very quick webinar, but hopefully you have, and I would appreciate if you could just put in some answers. Oh, here we go. We've got some responses going already. So half of you have already voted. Thank you. I should have put some background music. But maybe you can hear the traffic in the background and the birds because it's still quite warm here in Australia. Okay, so awesome. But so far, the majority of you are in sales roles or you're an owner-founder. We've got quite a few in operational roles, which is fine, and some in general management. So I'd like to think that most of you will have some interest in what we're talking about. I've still got 3 people out there who haven't voted. Come on, go and vote for me. I'd love to see the last of you vote, unless you're having any problems with the voting. So I'm going to I'll end that poll in a minute. I'll just give you a look at where we're all from. Hopefully you get to see this. I'm just going to quickly do a screenshot just in case this disappears for whatever reason, but I'm going to end the poll. Oh yeah, I can share the poll with you all. So hopefully you can see on there exactly what's come through. Can you see the results of the poll? Love a comment. Someone chat with me and just let me know if you can see. Oh, great, you can see the results of the poll. Awesome. And you can see me too. Awesome. Oh, that's not great. I didn't think that was going to happen. Hi, Kira. All right, so now we'll get right into it. That was more of a practice for me as much as anyone else. But what I'd like to do is now jump into the next poll, which is more in terms of looking at sorry, I'm going to get out of that one and sort of launch the second one, which looks more at lead generation. So I would love to know from you exactly where your leads come from. Now, this isn't too specific, but again, I'm going to share the results, and I think this will be quite interesting for me and a lot of us. So off you go. The poll is all yours. And if you can see me, that's a worry. This is the longest of the polls. So the first one, what's your main source of leads? That's the main one. Now, yes, we all get leads from different places, but your main one is the one I'm interested in. For us, it's referral. And it doesn't allow me to do the poll myself, which is a shame. I'll just change the settings so I can. The second one, the type of advertising you undertake, and this one's again, just a single, I think that one was set up as a single selection, but where do you do your advertising? The non-direct activities. So this is the stuff that, that I love. I love doing all the Instagrams and the Facebooks and all the rest of it. Not so much Instagram for me, but hopefully for a lot of you there. This is pretty cool watching the results coming live. Wouldn't it be awesome if we could do this with mystery shoppers? Actually, maybe not. So we've got 15 responses so far. Now, there are 3 people who are lurking here who aren't voting, so I'm going to stop when we get to 15. If those other 3 people would like to contribute next time around, we will. So I'm just going to end that poll, and let's have a look through them, and I'm going to share the results. So you may also be interested in these, and I'd love to see any comments as you go through these or anything that stands out. Now, for me, that first one, referral, being the biggest, is no surprise, but well, no surprise to me because that's what it is for me as well, but it's the same for a lot of you. Kind of begs the question, why do we spend so much time and money on social media and other things where that's the majority of it? And really interesting that advertising is only 13%. I feel it's the same for us. We don't do much of it anymore because it's not that successful. The types of advertising you undertake, of the advertising, Google Ads seems to be quite strong. But this one's really interesting in that LinkedIn is quite high up there. That's more than I would have thought. And traditional media is only 20%. MSPA website, interesting at 27%. I know you've got to source some more, but that's still pretty good. And a couple of others. Now, the non-direct activities, we've got, again, more than I would expect, 47% doing Instagram and country-specific media sites like Facebook. So I put that one in there because some countries don't have Facebook, but the Facebook and Facebook style are quite strong, and video stories, they're quite low. No one on Snapchat, no one on TikTok. If you listen to the Gary Vaynerchuks of the world, you'd say, well, we should be on TikTok, but we're not. I hope you find that as interesting as I just did. I think that Facebook side is stronger than I expected, although I did think it would be strong. And Google Ads is still pretty big. Any other thoughts or comments on that? Please put them down on the poll results. Otherwise, we're just going to fly through some more polls. So I'm going to now stop sharing that one. I'm going to get on to the next one. So like I said, this is a bit of an unstructured podcast to not have me talk as much, although I'm talking a lot, but to hear a lot from yourselves. And I think we'll all be able to sit back and look at this in the cold light of day and just get some ideas ourselves as to what's happening and what we can or should be doing. So I should stop sharing that one for now. The next one is about, so we're going down the sales funnel. I want to look at social outreach and talk about, I will allow myself to vote. Talk about here, do you have your own social media groups? So do you have a group for your clients, not shoppers? Now, this is something that I've come across recently where we've got more and more companies creating social media groups like Facebook groups just for their clients or their prospects. Now, I don't know how successful that is or can be, but I've been hearing mentions of that more and more. So I'd love to know if any of you are doing that. And again, which of the second question, which of the following do you pay for regularly? Do you pay for social media posts, guest posts, speaking at conferences? Do you pay for marketing consultants? Would love to know what you're doing there. Just so you know my answers, because I don't know that I can vote. We've just engaged a marketing consultant. We don't use any proposal writers, no sales trainers, and we don't pay for social media spots. But we're considering a social media group for our own shoppers. Now, part of this also, this format is to have a broad discussion about the things that are out there and available. In the third question, do you do any of the following activities? Do you run webinars? I do occasionally. They're okay. The hardest thing there is getting people to attend. run public events. Used to, but don't anymore because I think I've gotten lazy and I need to do it. And it's interesting here that 30% of the respondents so far do run public events. Do you run a newsletter list? I've got a newsletter list, and I know some of you do because I subscribe to it, but not everyone does. So I'm just going to give this one a few more minutes because we've got 12 out of 18 who have responded. And I've got those 3 people who don't vote. Come on, vote those 3 people. I'd love to get to 100% for one of these. But look, if you're not comfortable putting your responses in, that's fine. I'd rather have truth than just a made-up answer to get to 100% responses. So just as they come through, what's interesting is that we've got 15%, 2 people out of the 13 that have responded, or 3 people, do run polls and surveys for marketing purposes. It's something that some of you may or may not have considered. Okay, we've got our 15 votes. So I'm going to end the poll and share that one with you. I might go a little bit slower with the sharing and just leave them up for an extra minute or two so you've got time. Number 3 was single select only. Sorry, Kira. Thank you. I can't change that one now, but I'll come back to number 3. Hopefully you can see the responses. 3 of you do have your own social media groups. That's really interesting. You're way ahead of the curve for me. So again, this is having a group for, not for your shoppers, but for clients and prospects. I think that's an awesome idea. If anyone does that and you can share with me, I'd love to talk to you separately about it. And maybe it's a topic for another webinar, because I think that alone is super, super rich in terms of what we can do with it. What do you pay for regularly? Also surprising, 60% of respondents are paying for social media posts and 27% for professional writers. Speaking at conferences, someone's paid to speak at a conference. That can be a great way to market yourself, and I do that a lot. I don't pay for it, but it's a great way to do it. Using marketing consultants, only 33% of us do that. I would have thought that might be higher, but then mystery shopping companies, we don't have the greatest amount of money to spend doing. We've got to work out where we're going to spend it. And on sales training 4. Now, the question 4, which should have been tick all that apply, but it's come through as single select. That's pretty, if it's single select, that's pretty evenly split. We've got people running webinars, running public events, running polls, and running a newsletter list. So I think that's really interesting because it's more than I would have expected. I hope that's interesting for you guys as well. I'll just leave it up there for another minute so we can just have a bit of a breeze through. Like I said, I'm going to publish these. And yeah, more people run webinars than I thought. I know this is single select, but considering that's it is single select, even 20% of all respondents would have been good. So I think that's awesome. I'm going to stop sharing that now. It's got a few more of these. So we're not going to be a super long webinar here today. And I think that the value of this is going to be later on once we stop and look at the results. Okay. So that was the 3rd one. The 4th one, and there are 9 of these, we're almost halfway through, but they're shorter. I'd love to know, and I'll give you the answer here in my business, what resources you put to sales. Now, this isn't just what I would like to know. I think a lot of people would. Like, do we spend enough time and money on sales? So in my case, it's only me, and I've just employed someone to help with cold calling, and I'm going to see how that works out. But how many people work on sales? Is it just you? Again, I don't know who you are. I don't know who the responses are. Is it just you? Is it plus 1 person, plus 3 people, or whatever? And does your company do outbound calls? Do you do them yourself or through an agency? Now, the through an agency model is an interesting one because you can go online and get people to make calls, and they can charge for like about $2.70 or $2.50 US per outbound call. They are, I think, an interesting way to generate some sales activity or update a database, but it can get very expensive very quickly. And if anyone knows about outbound calls, you get a lot of wastage. So I'm not sure that's going to be a great way to go, but we've got one person here who's already said they do it. So just say if you haven't thought of it, you can get an agency to make outbound calls. You just have to give them the scripts. And we've got 3 companies out of the 18 who have got 5 or more people making sales calls. That's blown me away. That's cool. So I'm just going to wait a few more minutes. We've got 14 out of 18 responses in total, and then I'll share the results. Our sales pipeline is so long and so tedious and requires so much patience. I'm just going to share those results. It looks like one person might not be willing to share their results. That's fine. I'm going to end that poll just to keep things moving along and share the results. So have a look at this one. This one's really interesting. Only 14% of people are solo, and 29% of people are, so between solo and one person helping, that's 30-something%. But then the next biggest is 5 people, themselves plus 5 people. That's a real surprise. And does your company do outbound calls? Most do them themselves, 1 through an agency, and 4 don't do them at all. And I'm sure that would be the referral people. So I'm really surprised here today. So that's fantastic. I'm going to keep it moving along. We've got a few more to get through here. Like I said, I'm not going to talk too much about what I do today. The next one is about CRMs. Do you use a CRM? Or some sort of contact management system or some sort of sales tracking system. Let's call it a CRM. Can mean a lot of things to a lot of people these days. And then the second question, what type of CRM do you use? So how are you tracking your sales? Is it HubSpot, Salesforce? Now, I'd like to think this one's going to be of interest to you, because if this one, it'll be interesting to see if one thing stands out. We, just so you know, myself, we do use a CRM. We use something called Pipedrive. I have used Salesforce, I have used HubSpot, and I have used Nutshell, but I landed on Pipedrive. I love it. I can do so much with it, including automating emails, automating the sales process, identifying leads as to who's clicked on what as emails go out to people. I can identify who's opened an email. So there's a lot of stuff I can do that I want to do through my CRM, and I do. There are lots of people here who are still using Excel, and that might be something of interest for a future webinar, how to use a CRM in the industry shopping environment. I'm just going to wait for a few more of these. We've got 12 of it have come through so far. Just for those of you who have already completed it, the majority, 62%, are using Excel, 15% using Salesforce, and 8% using HubSpot. And 14% unsure, 2 of you, and I know there are a few people here who are operational, and that's fine. Okay, I'm just going to show you those ones. Just got a few more of these. So by far the vast majority do use a CRM or some sort of tracking system, but more than half are using Excel. It's a real surprise. I don't know why you would want to use Excel, but that's a topic for another conversation, I think, like I said. Very interesting. I'll just leave that up for another 5 seconds and then share. I'm just getting towards the end of these now. Stop sharing that one. Like I said, I'll send them all out to you. Now, so we're heading down the sales funnel here a little, and the next one is associations, and then proposals, pricing, and relationships. So with the associations one, Apart from the MSPA, how many other associations do you belong to? We only belong to the MSPA, and I want to change that. Also, specifically, how many market research associations? Do you belong to any market research associations? Also interesting. So most are already responding that they only belong to the MSPA in terms of membership. This is really the coolest thing. I don't know if I could do this somehow with my clients. Just watching the results come through is the coolest thing. 92% of you don't belong to a market research association. That's really interesting. I'll share these in a moment. I can't share them live. So that would have been really cool if you could all see them being shared live. But I think we've got a lot of votes in. I'm going to end that poll and just give you a quick look at that one. So half of you, including me, not my results are not in here, so more than half only belong to one association. How many belong to any market research association? Only 21%. And actually, I'm a no, so it would actually be more than that. It's about 80% who don't belong to any market research associations. That's really interesting because a lot of us do work for some market research associations here or there, but they do tend to be a little bit painful to work for because they think they're so superior, I know. And that's why perhaps a lot of people don't join market research associations. I hope there's no market research association here, but I just find them difficult to work with because they just think they know everything about mystery shopping. Okay, so in terms of proposals, so, okay, we're going down that sales funnel, we've created some awareness, we've recorded it in a CRM, we've joined some associations, got some more interest. But in terms of proposals, do you write proposals at all? Some people do not write proposals and they refuse. I do when I have to, but otherwise I prefer not to. Now, I don't call just sending an email with a price a proposal. I'm talking about a normal, something more substantial than a 1 or 2 paragraph email. So that's what I mean by a proposal. Do you have any proposal tracking systems to see if the prospect's opened up or where they've clicked through on? We do have a process in our CRM where we can see, if we do a proposal, we can see who opened what and what page they stayed on the longest and what they clicked on. That's really cool. It's actually a lot of fun to see, well, which parts of the proposal are engaging them the most, apart from the pricing page, of course. And do you find you're being asked to write more complicated proposals? And this one's coming through at 50-50, so I'll just wait for the last of the votes to come through. I think I've got one more to come through. I'll just share those results. Okay. I realize that some of you might not have English and reading English as your easiest thing in the world to do. So I'm trying to balance doing this quickly and keeping it rolling with giving people time to complete the results. So just end that poll and share those results. So 29% of people here do not write proposals. That's bigger than I thought. I think that's awesome because they're just the most ridiculous thing in the world. We're moving more and more towards not writing proposals. Most of my proposals are now just an email and I've got a link to a just generic about us webpage, nothing more than that. When I do a proposal, because I have to, I go all in with some proposal tracking software. But most of you don't use anything like that. 64% don't use any proposal tracking system. And are you being asked to write more complicated or simpler proposals? For us, they're less complicated. So once we put my vote in, it just becomes 50-50. So I don't know if that one's an interesting one at all. It came to mind when I was putting this thing together, but I don't know that those results are at all shedding any light on what's happening in the industry. But it's really interesting that 4 of you guys out there are not doing proposals. Like I said, that's awesome. So last 2, and I'll let you get on with today. Pricing. No, I'm not going to ask you how much you price your mystery shops, but is there a minimum for which you quote? So do you have a minimum based on size? Do you have a minimum based on shop numbers? Or do you have no minimums at all? I've got a horrible feeling this one's not multiple select. Could be right. And also, how do you price? Do you price based on a formula? Do you price based on whatever you think you can get away with? And I've done that. I'll do that as much as I can, but you can't always. Or do you base your pricing on an aggressive price that you think you will win? So the formula here could be something like 3 times shopper payments. And that seems to be a bit of an industry average. Pay up excluding reimbursements. I pay my shopper $15, so I'll do the shop for $45. That type of quantum. So again, for those of you who don't love English and don't have it anywhere near your first language, is there a minimum for which you quote? Do you have a minimum based on size, a minimum based on shop numbers, or no minimums? And how do you price based on a formula, based on whatever we think we can get away with, which is what I'd love to do. And thirdly, based on an aggressive price we think we can win. I've already got everyone responding here, so that's fantastic. I'll share these results really quickly. Isn't this interesting? So, I don't know if you guys are finding this as interesting as I am, but I'm surprised and quite stunned that 71% don't have any minimums. Yeah, I don't know why you do that. That's probably a topic for some of these are probably good topics for a workshop session, roundtable session in the conference in Phuket if we get to have it this year. And secondly, price based on, if you can't see the results of that one, sorry, I'll just share. Thank you for that. There we go. That is really surprising. And for the 4 of you who have a minimum based on shop numbers, that will come as a surprise. We have a minimum based on dollars, really. I look at the dollars I can make. But then only one other. We actually price based on whatever we think we can get away with. And what I mean by that is that I've got a rough idea of the shopper multiple and then get a feel for this client. So for example, banking and finance, you can charge a lot more and they tend to be more demanding clients. But I hope second last one is quite eye-opening. Okay, I'll stop sharing that one. And finally, I'm going to launch the last one, which is about relationship. So this is just a one question. We're going to be out of here in about a minute or two. Which of the following are true for your sales process? Do you now find you do less face-to-face, less phone calls, more email, or more direct contact over messaging apps? This looks like a really complicated question. And hopefully I did it as multiple selection. I didn't want to do it as individual questions. So I'm breaking some good survey rules here. Okay, I'm already kind of blown away. You can't see the results, but I'll read them out. Which of the following are true for your sales process? We now do less face-to-face. We now do less phone calls. We do more email contact. We do more direct contact over messaging apps. We've got a few of you left to respond. Just one more that usually comes in. Thanks everyone for the great participation. It's fantastic. This only works if you all play, which you almost all have. Now, I'm sure someone's on a mobile phone somewhere and hard to get to things. I know things happen, but we've got 88% voting again. So I'll just end that poll and I will share with you those results as well. Not many of you are doing less face-to-face. I personally love it because I do love to talk. Not many are doing less phone calls. There's so much for our efficient internet-based computerized society. More email contact and more direct contact over messaging apps. That last one is really interesting. Again, it's something we haven't played with, but staying in contact with the client over messaging apps. Now, I know that that's more prominent in places like China and in Japan, well, basically all over Asia, except for, I suppose, Australia and maybe places like Singapore. But that one's interesting that it's popped up at 27%. So I hope you can, yeah, I got single select in there again. I'm sorry about that. What's interesting here is that we have, actually I will, if you could just bear with me one moment, I'm going to see if I can change something. No, I can't. We're going to try to change the questionnaire. Look, what so the whole intention here today was, I'm just going to, I don't want to destroy, sorry, I'm just going to destroy things. What I'm going to do from here on in is, from here, I will send you all a copy of those polls. I think part of this has been to just get a feel for where everything is, and hopefully it helps you as well. And it might, the educational side of it might be in just opening up some of the possibilities that are out there that you've thought about, but you might just think, well, hey, this is cool because other people have thought about it and they've done more than that, they're implementing them. Also, I would like to use this to perhaps the feedback loop back into some further webinars. I think there could be something here about using a CRM system, and there could be some more things here about pricing, which I've already done one, but there could be something here about how to price, like I mentioned, three times shopper payments, excluding reimbursements, setup fees and things like that. And also some of the traps in pricing, which I've done something similar about in the past as well. So if there are any questions, I don't know how this thing's going to summarize it and send it all out, but I'm sure it's in the settings somewhere and I'll send it all out to you. Otherwise, I will send it out to you manually myself. If there's nothing else here, if there are any other, does anyone have any final thoughts or observations? I'll just leave it open for a minute in case you do. But thanks so much for playing, because like we've had 88% people respond to the polls, which is just fantastic. This would be stunning to do at a global level. Hopefully Anil can make it happen, make her magic happen. If anyone else has got anything, and like I said, we might also talk to Anil about perhaps turning some of these into workshops, or maybe even find a way to do this in the conference itself. It would be really interesting. I know a lot of people are scared of sharing results, but as you can see here, everyone's quite willing to play along, perhaps on the condition of anonymity, but if we had a bigger room, that would be awesome, and maybe a longer questionnaire. I didn't want to do too long a questionnaire in a webinar because that would be killer. So thanks everyone. If there are no questions, I'm going to wrap it up here. We're done in 40 minutes as we do plan to do. And I hope you'll have a fantastic day. Stay safe as we have to these days, and hopefully all this rubbish washes away and we can get to see each other in Phuket in November. Thanks everyone, and take care. Bye-bye. Thanks for tuning in.